A gunman opens fire in Atlanta, Georgia, killing a woman and wounding 4. Police say they arrested the suspect after a long manhunt. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I am Nina Richie Lago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. The United States reaffirms its ironclad commitment to the Philippines. Philippines and Brunei to discuss defense partnerships. Russian President Vladimir Putin says Ukraine is behind the drone strike at the Kremlin. Reports claim Russian ghost ships are responsible for the Nord pipeline blast. And 29,000 police officers will be mobilized in King Charles's coronation.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was given full military honors.
The United States reaffirms its ironclad commitment to the Philippines. It may invoke the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty in any armed conflict involving its armed forces, including its Coast Guard. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reiterated their commitment to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in a Pentagon meeting, where the Philippine leader was also accorded full military honors. Here's Mian Corvera for the details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. was given full military honors in a historic visit in Pentagon before his meeting with U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. This is the first time that a foreign leader has been given a full military honors ceremony in Pentagon under the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden. During their meeting, Austin reiterated the United States' ironclad commitment to the Philippines under the Mutual Defense Treaty. The U.S. Defense Chief specifically mentioned America's support for the issues the Philippines is facing in South China Sea amid escalating tensions in the region.
As President Biden has made clear, our commitment to the defense of the Philippines is ironclad. And let once again that our Mutual Defense Treaty applies to armed attacks on our armed forces, Coast Guard vessels, public vessels, or aircraft in the Pacific, including anywhere in the South China Sea.
The U.S. official also said that they cannot afford to leave the Philippines behind, which they consider as family.
For decades, the Philippines has been an indispensable friend and ally to the United States. Our alliance is rooted in our common democratic values, and it draws strength from the deep bonds between our peoples. As I said before, Mr. President, we're more than allies, we're family.
President Marcos, for his part, expressed gratitude for the warm reception given to him by the United States, which aims to further strengthen the long-standing and very robust relationship with the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. It is a great pleasure and an honor to have been invited by your President and the government of the United States to come and visit this official visit. With the background of the strengthening relationship between our two countries. Strengthening what already has begun is a long-standing and very robust relationship that we have developed over the many years. And the call of the times, unfortunately, is asking for us to meet these new challenges that perhaps we have not faced before. And that's why it is very important it's continuing exchanges that we have started. First, with the visits of the Vice President, Secretary Clinton, yourself, and the 2+2 meetings that we have conducted last month. And so, Mr. Secretary, I look forward to a very bright future between the Philippines and the United States, a future that is founded on the long experience and, as you say, friendship and familial relationship with the people-to-people exchanges between our two countries have been ongoing at every level. And it is our job, I believe now, strengthen that and to build upon that. And I thank you for this opportunity.
During the said meeting, the bilateral defense guidelines between the Philippine and U.S. Defense Department were also reaffirmed, which aims to support the alliance in modern times. The Pentagon visit of President Marcos is part of a series of meetings held in Washington, D.C. Earlier, President Marcos had a bilateral meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden in the Oval Office at the White House on May 1. In February, Austin visited the Philippines, which was followed by 2+2 ministerial talks in Washington in April. Mayan Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Army Public Affairs Chief Colonel Cercis Trinidad says the Philippines is discussing defense partnerships with ASEAN states. Brunei's Chief of Staff Lieutenant Colonel Sufri Rosli also met with top officials from the Philippine Army. Trinidad says Sufri is in the country for the 4th Army Working Group meeting. The annual talks serve as a venue to update bilateral activities and develop engagement plans. Trinidad says Sufri conveyed his gratitude to the Philippines for being one of the closest allies of Brunei. Top military officials also stressed the role of Brunei in helping peace and progress in Mindanao. Aside from Brunei, the Philippines is also seeks to strengthen its defense ties with Singapore and Cambodia. The U.S. Embassy says Washington and Seoul have signed a $111.5 million partnership to boost the Philippines' climate resilience. The project will benefit the cities of Batangas, Borongan, Cotabato, Iloilo, Legazpi, and Zamboanga. Washington says the agreement will also enhance the capacity of the local government units to develop guidelines and use climate adaptation technology. The United States and South Korea will also ink a partnership to prevent and reduce maritime pollution in Manila Bay. The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines assures that with the completion of the 52 billion peso Mindanao-Visayas Interconnection Project, or MVIP, consumers may expect reduced power interruption and more reliable and efficient energy transmission. Here's Eden Santos for the details.
Power interruption in the country are expected to reduce with the completion of the 52 billion peso Mindanao-Visayas Interconnection Project, or MVIP. The National Grid Corporation of the Philippines, or NGCP, says that MVIP will improve the reliability of transmission services and make energy utilization more efficient. In an interview with Net25's TV radio program Ano sa Palagay Nyo, or ASPN, NGCP spokesperson Attorney Cynthia Alabanza says the MVIP completes the connection of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The project was conceptualized in 1984, but it was set aside and was only revived in 2009 when the NGCP took over the country's power grid. Initially, the connection was supposed to pass through the eastern part of the country from Leyte to Bohol up to Surigao. However, many problems were encountered, which led to the decision to pass through the western part of Mindanao to Cebu instead. The power grids of Visayas and Mindanao are now connected by a 184 circuit kilometer high voltage direct current submarine transmission line under the MVIP. The MVIP has a full transfer capacity of 450 megawatts that can be extended to 900 megawatts.
Actually, yung current energization plan niya hanggang 450 lang. Kasi yun lang ang kinakailangan ng system. Pero this is, kumbaga, future-proof in a sense. Kasi pag lumaki yung pangangailangan ng Visayas, Mindanao, then we can expand it to accommodate more generations.
At present, it has an initial load of only 22.5 megawatts, which will gradually increase to 50 megawatts in mid-May. Despite the completion of the MVIP, Alabanza clarified that it's still better for each grid to be self-sufficient.
NGCP advocates na Luzon sapat para sa pangangailangan niya, Visayas sapat para sa pangangailangan niya, Mindanao sapat para sa pangangailangan niya. And the interconnection will provide stability, and in case na magkaroon ng pangkukulang, yun nga, like you said, yellow alert, absolutely. pwede tayong maghiraman.
Eden Santos reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. gets investment pledges for the business process outsourcing or BPO industry during his trip to the United States. According to Malacanang, Optum is set to invest about 800 million pesos in medical BPOs, expecting to create 1,500 jobs. BPO firm Atento also commits to establish its first call center in the country in Iloilo's Business Park in Mandurriao. The president is confident with Atento's success in the local market, as he notes Filipinos' ability to speak and write well. The 7-day COVID positivity rate in Metro Manila has risen to 19.7% as of May the 2nd, 2023. Octa Research Group fellow Dr. Guido David projects the cases to increase in the coming days, with a highly transmissible Arcturus or XBB.1.16 sublineage of the Omicron subvariant already causing the virus to spread in the country. Moira Encina reports.
COVID positivity rate in the National Capital Region may increase up to 25% based on the projection of Dr. Guido David, a fellow at the Octa Research Group. The projection came after Metro Manila's 7-day testing positivity rate rose to 19.7% as of May 2, which is 7% higher than the 12.7% recorded on April 25. Despite the slight increase, David noted Metro Manila's hospital occupancy rate remained low at 24.7% as of May 2 compared to 22.5% on April 25. In an interview with Net25 TV radio program, Ano sa Palagay Nyo, David says that NCR's positivity rate may already exceed the 20% mark. He also mentioned that fewer people are being tested now compared to last year. Therefore, David said that it's possible that the number of infections is double or triple the reported cases.
Almost 20% na yung positivity rate sa Metro Manila.
Yeah.
And sa other provinces nearby, sa Cavite and sa Laguna, more than 20% nasa high positivity rate na. Of course, may mga nagsasabi, ano naman, mababa naman yung number of cases. Mababa yung cases kasi konti lang tinetest natin sa RT-PCR. And we're only averaging 3,000 tests per day sa Metro Manila. Last year at this time, we were averaging 12,000 tests per day. So times 4 agad.
If the number of cases multiplied, it will show that the number of infections is not low.
We're not seeing the full extent, pero they can see it on the ground.
Although the hospitalization rate is still low, many people are getting sick but not being reported. In David's opinion, the Arcturus subvariant is responsible for the rapid increase in virus infection in the country.
Kaya ako nasabi yan kasi meron ako mga friends na nag-report sa akin na, or nagsabi sa akin na they tested positive and meron sila yung conjunctivitis or pink eyes or sore eyes na yun nga, as I mentioned, mas mataas yung incidence niya dito sa Arcturus. So my guess is kumakalat na siya dito and it's highly transmissible and that's why we're seeing increasing numbers. In fact, yung reproduction numbers sa Metro Manila nasa 1.79. So mabilis yung pagkalat niya at this time.
So even if only 5% of cases are severe, David says it is possible for the number of severe cases to increase. David also estimated that COVID cases in the country could possibly peak in the last week of May and the first week of June. Moira Encina reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The pharmaceutical and biotechnology company Moderna offers job opportunities for Filipino health workers and professionals. This is after the company declares to establish and build its facility in the country. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. met Moderna Chief Commercial Officer Arpa Garay and Senior Vice President and General Manager Patrick Bergstedt in Washington during his state visit. According to the two Moderna officials, they will establish a shared service facility for pharmacovigilance that will result in more jobs and opportunities for health professionals in the country. Garay says that the shared service facility for pharmacovigilance in the Philippines will serve the entire Asia-Pacific region. Moderna's interest is rooted in the successful public-private partnership between the Philippine government and the company that became a reason for its expansion. The Philippines' 1,000 peso polymer bill scores the coveted 2022 Banknote of the Year award. Let's get the whole story from Ces Alvarez.
For the first time ever, the Philippines' 1,000 peso polymer bill has won the Banknote of the Year award for 2022. Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP says the polymer banknote is the first Philippine banknote to win the award from the International Banknote Society or IBNS. The 1,000 peso bill also bested finalists from Algeria, Barbados, Egypt, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. IBNS says the Philippines' design is a success, eye-pleasing, and combines endangered species with environmental motives. BSP circulated the dirt-free and water-resistant 1,000 peso polymer bill last year. It was printed by Note Printing Australia, a subsidiary of the Reserve Bank of Australia. The new banknote features the Philippine eagle and sampaguita flower. Its reverse side shows the two Bataha Reefs Natural Park, which UNESCO declared as a World Heritage Site. The bill also features the Tinalak weave design of the Tiboli people and South Sea Pearl. BSP hopes the designs of the polymer banknote will remind Filipinos of the importance of environmental preservation and the need to ensure a sustainable future for all. Ces Alvarez for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Lahat? Coming up, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky denies attack on Russia. United Nations calls for end to Sudan war. And more than 29,000 UK police officers to take part in King Charles's coronation. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap.
Hello everyone! I'm Barbie Imperial and today nandito ako sa Lutong Daza. Madami kaming prepare na iba't ibang sushi. So, abangan niyo po ako ngayong Sabado sa Lutong Daza, 11 a.m. sa NET 25.
Gamers nating taxi drivers ang didiretso ang biyahe hanggang jackbox round at magkakaroon ng chance sa manalo ng 180,000 pesos. Totoo ba yun, basta driver, sweet lover?
Yes, sir.
Anong tawag sa wika ng Austria?
Si Mandarin po. Saya lang, sir.
Ba't ka masaya?
Parang mali.
Yes. Para game!
Agad!
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. In a visit to Finland, President Volodymyr Zelensky says Ukraine did not attack Putin or Moscow. Wednesday morning footage shows smoke rising over the Kremlin. The Russian presidency claims that Ukraine had attempted a strike on President Vladimir Putin's residence, describing it as a planned terrorist attack or act and assassination. Russian officials say 2 drones targeted the complex and were disabled using electronic radar assets. Ukraine presidential advisor Mikhailo Podolyak notes that the incident indicates that Moscow could be preparing a large-scale terrorist provocation in Ukraine.
Щодо дронів над Кремлем. Все достатньо прозоро і все достатньо зрозуміло, але я все ж таки проговорю. По-перше, безумовно, Україна до цього не має жодного відношення. Тому що ніякої воєнної цінності в таких діях не існує.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says he's highly skeptical of Russia's claim that Ukraine staged a drone attack on the Kremlin. Russian authorities say the overnight attack had been orchestrated in an attempt to assassinate President Vladimir Putin. Blinken says he doubts that.
I can't in any way validate them. We simply don't know. Second, I would take anything coming out of the Kremlin with a very large shaker of salt. So let's see. We'll see what the facts are. And it's really hard to comment or speculate on this without really knowing what the facts are.
Ukraine maintains it had nothing to do with the attack. One Ukrainian official accuses the Kremlin of using the incident to justify large-scale attacks on civilians in Ukraine. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says U.S. is not encouraging Ukraine to strike Russian territory. Washington released their statement after an attempted drone attack on Kremlin. But Russia claims Kyiv forces have launched multiple attacks on Kremlin. And each time, Kremlin says American officials have insisted that they neither encouraged nor enabled the attacks. Russian strikes on Ukraine's southern Kherson region killed 16 people. The strikes came as Ukraine prepares for a spring offensive. The city of Kherson lies near the front line in southern Ukraine. It is a city from which Russian forces withdrew last November. Officials announced that it will be under curfew for 58 hours starting Friday. During these 58 hours, it is forbidden to move on the streets of the city. The city will be also closed for entry and exit. Residents are advised to stock up on food and medicine. Kherson was captured by Russian troops last year in the first days of the invasion. It remained under Russian occupation until November of 2022. Two Nord Stream pipelines carrying gas from Russia to Europe via the Baltic Sea were knocked offline by underwater explosions last September. Several competing theories have circulated about the cause, with some attributing it to Russian Navy ships who were seen coasting within the pipeline's vicinity. What actually happened remains unknown. However, reports have claimed so-called Russian ghost ships or unmarked seafaring vessels, including a research vessel, a tugboat, and a third naval ship were in the blast zone for several hours before the incident occurred. They reportedly had their transmitters turned off, though the broadcasters claim their movements could still be tracked using intercepted radio communications. The gas leak from the blast spewed out a huge amount of greenhouse gas emissions, estimated at 500 metric tons of climate-affecting methane per hour. U.S. senators announced a major cross-party effort to combat China's growing global influence by limiting the flow of investment and state-of-the-art technology while deterring any potential threat to Taiwan. The push comes after President Joe Biden signed a package with $52 billion in new subsidies for microchip manufacturing and scientific research. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and 11 of his most senior lieutenants held a news conference to outline a 5-step plan aimed at addressing competition from China.
Bottom line, time's not on our side. The Xi regime is working every day to catch up and surpass the United States. There is no reason our two parties here in the Congress and in the Senate can't come together and send a strong message to the Chinese government that we're united in this pressing national security effort, and we are committed to maintaining America's lead in the future.
He said lawmakers would look at export controls and sanctions, limiting Beijing's ability to acquire U.S. innovations in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and another advanced tech. The drive will also look at assisting small businesses and strengthening the process for assessing the national security implications of inward foreign investments. The Senate's committee chairs will spend the coming months working with their Republican counterparts to craft various packages of legislation to achieve the goals set out. United States and Mexican officials have agreed on new immigration policies meant to deter illegal border crossings ahead of an expected increase in migrants following the end of pandemic restrictions next week. Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall spent Tuesday meeting with Mexico President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and other top officials, according to statements from both nations. Under the agreement, Mexico will continue to accept migrants from Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and Nicaragua who have been turned away at the border, and up to 100,000 individuals from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador who have family in the U.S. will be eligible to live and work there. Despite sharing a 1,951-mile border with the U.S., Mexico had been notably absent from the rollout last week of a fresh set of efforts. As part of the agreement, the Pentagon has requested quarterly updates from Homeland Security on how it would staff its border mission without service members. It was not immediately clear if those updates have happened or if border officials will be able to meet the terms of the agreement. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres says they have failed to stop conflict from erupting in Sudan. This as persistent fighting between rival generals has undermined efforts to firm up a truce. The UN chief calls for the fighting to stop.
The UN Refugee Agency has already affirmed that more than 100,000 people have fled, and 800,000 people might flee the country in the coming days and weeks. The fighting needs to stop, and to stop now.
Guterres says fighting in Sudan took the global body by surprise. He says the UN had hoped negotiations toward a civilian government would be successful.
We were not expecting this to happen. To the extent that we and many others were not expecting this to happen, we can say that we failed to avoid it to happen. But I don't think there is anything we should have done that we didn't to avoid it, because, as I mentioned, we were entirely convinced that this would not happen.
The deadly violence erupted on April 15th as the generals heading the military and paramilitary clashed. The fighting has claimed more than 550 lives and left nearly 5,000 people wounded. South Africa evacuates its citizens from Sudan. Emotions are high as the evacuees are reunited with their families at the airport. RT correspondent Noluvuyo Kunge reports.
African nationals that were evacuated in Sudan after being trapped in the country for more than 2 weeks as the conflict between rapid support forces and the army continues to rage on have finally made it back home. On Saturday, we saw 10 citizens arriving, while the rest of the people that were evacuated, including some foreign nationals from other SADC countries, arrived on Sunday evening. So far, we understand that Angola, Lesotho, and Zimbabwe were some of the countries that asked for assistance from South Africa, and it seems like South Africa managed to assist those countries with at least one citizen from each country.
You would recall with other countries the government has really been involved in evacuating diplomats and their families rather than the ordinary citizenry. But with us, it was our people that we were able to bring back home.
The Department of International Relations and Cooperation has confirmed that evacuation plan has now been complete and all citizens are exactly where they're supposed to be, and that there is not a single South African left in Sudan. Family members of some of the passengers stranded are finally at peace and have thanked government and South African NGO Gift of the Givers for helping citizens and their loved ones escape the violence that broke out in the Sudanese capital.
The past few days has been really tough because each and every day you hear, new developments and, to show how will the whole evacuation process go about. So just to know that someone is doing something about the situation just gave a bit of comfort, and to know that, it's okay and things will fall into place eventually. So thank you so much for our government.
We weren't able to communicate to them, and it was quite a long time, not knowing what's happening, where are they safe, do they have food, do they have shelter? There's quite a few things that goes through your mind thinking about the experience.
It was very, very stressful, and sometimes in their voices I could hear they were very stressed themselves, especially when the fighting was right outside the building. They didn't know when they should run from the building. They had planned on walking out the following morning on foot, and then they made the decision last week, Saturday, I think it was, just to get in the cars and drive. And they made it out safely. They went through a lot of roadblocks, but the other armed forces, they just let them through.
Noting African government's promises, Sudanese ambassador to South Africa, Osama Hassan Dirar, has welcomed strides made to date, while also acknowledging some slippage against expected timelines. He has, however, promised that there will be peace in Sudan very soon.
I can describe what is going on in Sudan as just kind of rebellion. Sudanese armed forces are taking care of the civilians. They don't like to make any casualties or victims among the civilians, but they are planning and doing their controlling plan over the city and over the whole state and over the whole country. So soon we'll hear good news about restoration of peace and security in Sudan.
The conflict in Khartoum, which started on the 15th of April between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, has claimed the lives of hundreds of people, and the anxiety and the fear for South Africans caught in the crossfire has come to an end, even though the fighting continues. Nolovuyo Kunge, RT, Johannesburg.
Myanmar's military has pardoned more than 2,000 political prisoners, but ousted de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi is not among them. Myanmar's junta announced through state-run media that it planned to grant pardons to 2,153 political prisoners on Wednesday. Those pardoned were reportedly people who have been guilty of spreading false information and endangering the military since the 2021 coup. Aung San Suu Kyi has been sentenced to a combined 33 years in prison. She was likely not pardoned because she has not been convicted of the same charges as those released. The military appears to have taken the gesture of clemency toward political prisoners to ward off international criticism of air raids it conducted against civilians and other measures. More than 29,000 police officers will take part in one of UK's most significant ever security operations for the coronation of King Charles III this weekend. Some 2,000 guests, including global royalty and world leaders, will be at Saturday's event in central London, with huge crowds lining the route to and from Buckingham Palace. The government says security services were ready to deal with the challenges. The mall leading to Buckingham Palace has been closed off to traffic in preparation for Saturday's coronation, which is the first to take place in Britain in 70 years. Thousands of ceremonial troops will take part in a procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey as part of the coronation. Buckingham Palace has rejected reports that the security operation would cost at least £100 million or $125 million, raising eyebrows and complaints as many Britons struggle with the soaring cost of living. In Rwanda, floods and landslides claim at least 127 lives. Police arrest suspect in Atlanta medical clinic shooting. And Japan offers climate change assistance to Barbados. Please don't go away. Mata ng Agila International will be back in a few moments.
Hindi ka pwede mag-check out, sir.
Mag-check out nyo ko.
Hindi ka pa nag-check-in, mag-check out ka na. Ano ang pangyayaring hindi magandang iyong pinagdaanan?
Nagmahal po. Iniwan din po ako.
Isang beses ka lang ba niloko? Ilang beses?
Isa lang po.
Hindi mo ba alam kung ilang beses ako niloko?
Ilan po?
Tatlo!
Ang ating game ay merong cardboard. Yung ping-pong, i-golf mo sa, isushoot doon sa butas na yon.
It was an experience of a cold paradise when we visited the Manor Camp Janhay, truly one of the beguiling destinations in the city of Pines. In this episode, we're taking you to this gem in the woods, offering nostalgic charm 5,000 feet above sea level. Let's take it all in, the beauty of nature and the mix of comfort, luxury, and the hospitality that only the manor can bring.
Our goal talaga is to provide luxury experience for our guests. Relax sila, they feel safe.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
Mag-check out nyo ko.
Hindi ka pa nag-check-in, mag-check out ka na. Ano ang pangyayaring hindi magandang iyong pinagdaanan?
Nagmahal po. Iniwan din po ako.
Isang beses ka lang ba niloko? Ilang beses?
Isa lang po.
Hindi mo ba alam kung ilang beses ako niloko?
Ilan po?
Tatlo!
Ang ating game ay merong cardboard. Yung ping-pong, i-golf mo sa, isushoot doon sa butas na yon.
Shakespeare's first folio marks its 400th anniversary of publication at the Guildhall Library in London. From London, England, Lee Lance Baldos will give us the tour.
Shakespeare's plays go on display in London as Britain and the world mark the 400th anniversary of its publication. The copy put on display at the Corporation of London's Guildhall Library is one of the best preserved versions of the folio, whose publication after the playwright's death saved many of his most famous plays, such as Macbeth and Twelfth Night.
We're celebrating 400 years since it was first published, almost on the spot that we're at. We were asked as part of something called Folio 400 to put our first folio on display, and I decided to do it as close to Shakespeare's birthday, which was yesterday, as we could. So that's why we decided to do it today. You should be able to see first folios across the country between now and the end of the year, and in fact internationally, in America and in New Zealand, for instance, first folios will be going on display.
The event only ran for one day, and many of the attendees were delighted to see the first folio. The Guildhall Library stands where the folio's editors Henry Condell and John Hemmings once lived, and opposite the former churchyard where they were buried.
The copy we have here is regarded as one of the finest in the world. It's absolutely complete. Nothing's been made up from another copy. Nothing's in facsimile. I have one tiny bit of the corner of a page missing, which has been repaired, but apart from that, it's a fantastic copy.
Ross also cited some facts about the publishers and editors that are part of the amazing history of British literature.
So we're on the site where the publishers, the editors lived. They're buried just across the road, in about 50 feet away. And the printers were just about 300 yards to the north of here, where the Barbican is today. So William Jaggard and his son Isaac Jaggard lived there.
The first folio was published on the 8th of November 1623, and there are events being held worldwide to mark the anniversary year. Reporting here from London, United Kingdom, I am Eli Lance Baldos from Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, or OPCW, reveals its new chemical laboratory in the Netherlands. Authorities say the high-tech facility replaced an older and smaller chemical facility. The chem lab costs more than 34 million euros. It includes upgraded storage space for complex equipment used by the OPCW's inspectors. A training hub was also built to instruct officials from its 193 member states. OPCW declares they will soon complete destroying chemical stockpiles. Officials say the new lab will deal with emerging chemical weapon threats posed by artificial intelligence. Floods and landslides claimed at least 127 lives in the African nation of Rwanda. Torrential rains destroyed homes and cut off roads in several parts of the country. Residents scrambled for safety as rivers of mud swept through the streets. The small country is located in the Great Lakes region of Africa. It has gone through similar disasters in the past, but this one is the deadliest in several years. The government is setting up shelters in schools and other buildings for those forced to evacuate from their homes. There is no estimate on the number of people who have been displaced. Other parts of Africa have been drenched by rain in recent days. In Uganda, at least 6 people have died due to flooding. Police in Atlanta have arrested a suspect after a man opened fire in the waiting room of a city medical clinic. He killed one woman and wounded 4 others. Police picked up 24-year-old Dion Patterson after a long manhunt. The shooting began over the lunch hour at a downtown medical clinic. A 39-year-old woman died at the scene. 4 other women are being treated in hospital. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens says the survivors are fighting for their lives. People say Patterson had been at the clinic for an appointment accompanied by his mother. The gunman fled the scene after the shooting and stole a car, prompting police to launch a massive dragnet. Police are not saying where they found Patterson or commenting on other details of his capture. Serbia is in mourning Thursday, a day after a 14-year-old suspect shot his teacher, 8 fellow students, and a security guard after allegedly drawing up a kill list. The tragedy left the Balkan nation reeling. Gun violence at schools is extremely rare in Serbia, and the country's president called Wednesday's shooting one of the most difficult days in recent history. Schools across Serbia held a moment of silence. People continued to place flowers, toys, and light candles at a makeshift memorial on the pavement outside of the school. Health officials said 2 of the 7 injured were in critical condition after undergoing a slew of operations. Serbia will observe 3 days of mourning starting Friday. The Vladislav Ribnikar Elementary School in downtown Belgrade's Vračar district remains sealed off on Thursday, with police guarding the entrance to the building. The Interior Ministry has asked firearm owners to keep their guns locked in safes, warning that people who did not abide would have their weapons seized. Police across Europe have arrested more than 100 people in a crackdown on Italy's most powerful mafia group. Investigators uncovered a widespread network of restaurants, pizzerias, cafes, and ice cream parlors that the Drangheta family has used as shells to launder money. Most of the arrests took place in Italy, with suspects facing charges of international drug trafficking, money laundering, and possession of firearms. Italian anti-mafia prosecutors said Operation Eureka was unprecedented in terms of scale. According to the EU's law enforcement agency, or Europol, the operation was a 3-year investigation spanning 10 countries, with assets worth more than 25 million euros, roughly 1.5 billion pesos seized. In the last few years, there has been a huge police effort to fight the Drangheta, so these arrests will be seen as a big victory for anti-mafia prosecutors in Italy and across Europe. Authorities in the United States and Europe arrested nearly 300 people linked to illicit operations within the dark web, which officials say was the largest operation of its kind. The Joint Task Force of the Europol and various agencies have confiscated over $53 million and seized the dark web marketplace Silk Road as part of an international crackdown on drug trafficking. The operation targeting the monopoly market is the latest major takedown of sales platforms for drugs and other illicit goods on the so-called dark web, a part of the internet hosted within an encrypted network and accessible only through specialized anonymity providing tools.
These people were either buying or selling illicit goods on the dark web. I mean hard drugs, I mean firearms, I mean malware. These were not innocent people that just happened to be on the dark web. They were committing criminal activities on these platforms.
The agency, based in The Hague, built intelligence based on evidence from Germany, which it said seized the marketplace's criminal infrastructure.
Over 100 investigators have been working on this case for the past month. We have 9 countries involved with at least a dozen investigators in each agency committed to unmasking these individuals behind the dark web accounts.
Leading up to the operation announced Tuesday, German and U.S. authorities took down the Hydra dark web market in April last year. Police in Brazil searched ex-President Jair Bolsonaro's home and seized his cell phone for allegations of falsifying COVID-19 vaccination certificates to dodge health restrictions. The raid came after federal police uncovered a scheme in which a top Bolsonaro aide, Army Colonel Mauro Cid, was involved. Cid allegedly tapped a network of contacts in the health system and government to obtain fraudulent vaccination certificates for Bolsonaro, the president's daughter, himself, his wife and daughters, and 2 other presidential aides. Police said to the Supreme Court that there was evidence Bolsonaro was fully aware of entries in the Health Ministry's electronic vaccination record system, which aimed to enable his anti-vaccine inner circle to dodge international travel requirements and pandemic restrictions. The raid was ordered by Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, suggesting Bolsonaro may have been personally involved. Police carried out 16 search and seizure orders and executed 6 arrest warrants as part of the operation. Bolsonaro denied the allegations, accusing the authorities of trying to fabricate a case against him. In France, rejected referendum leaves demonstrators furious with a cacophony of pots and pans. Protesters loudly banged pots and pans near a castle where French President Emmanuel Macron was to make a speech. It has become a popular way to voice anger at a resented new law raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. Similar saucepan gestures, dubbed casseroles, were staged elsewhere in the country where government members were scheduled to travel. Macron attended a ceremony for the 175th anniversary of the abolition of slavery in France at the Fort de Joux near the border with Switzerland. As police were preventing protesters from getting too close to the Fort de Joux, Macron made a surprise stop in the nearby town of Dole to meet with French people on a street market without the clattering of pots and pans. He was not able to avoid all criticism, with several people voicing their concerns. Macron said that they must carry out some reforms because they cannot create wealth and redistribute it. Venezuela rejects the decision of a U.S. court that allows the auction of a state oil company. U.S. branch of Venezuela's state oil business. The U.S. court also targets Caracas chief moneymaker PDVSA. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez says they do not recognize any kind of payment agreement with any creditor that is not validly directed by the Venezuelan state. She claims the decision is a politically motivated act by the United States. She argues the OFAC license granted to the National Assembly violated both Venezuelan law and international law.
Esta carta del 7 de abril, ellos la hacen pública el 28. Y allí dice muy claramente.
Japan's foreign minister has told his counterpart in the Caribbean nation Barbados that Japan will continue to offer necessary support in the fields of environment, climate change, and disaster mitigation. Hayashi Yoshimasa held talks with Kerry Simmons in Barbados on Tuesday in his second leg of a five-nation tour of Latin America and the Caribbean. He is the first Japanese foreign minister to travel to the country. Hayashi praised Barbados for leading discussions on development funds for developing countries vulnerable to climate change. The two ministers confirmed the importance of transparent and fair financing. Hayashi and Simmons also exchanged views on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. They agree that any unilateral change to the status quo by force is unacceptable anywhere in the world. Coming right up, Meta warns hackers exploit interest in AI chatbot. Drug maker develops an experimental medicine for Alzheimer's. And a colony of penguins finds a new home in Singapore. Catch the latest in business, sports, and entertainment when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Pag-uusapan natin ang top 5 killer diseases sa bansa. Ano-ano kaya ang mga sakit na ito? Bakit kaya ito ang leading cause of death sa ating bansa?
So yung mga sakit po natin sa puso, sa dugo, maraming factors that come into play po. Pero ito po mga sakit na ito, lifestyle-related diseases.
Marami makaka-relate dito. May diabetes.
May common risk factors po ito.
Ika nga payat.
Opo.
Magkakaroon pa rin, di ba?
Kaya ka pumapayat, meron ka na palang diabetes.
Dinala nyo na kagad si Gato sa ospital. No?
Ang alam namin sa heart attack is nahihirapan huminga. Pero siya po kasi more on back pain. So nung nagsuka na siya, doon na po kami na-alarma.
Hindi kami nananakot, pero importanteng usapin po ito. Mag-reality check tayo.
Thank you for watching Mata ng Agila International. To receive more trusted, connected, and on-point news, follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV. Facebook owner Meta warns that hackers are exploiting interest in artificial intelligence or AI. According to Meta's security team, it found that a hacker's software claims to offer ChatGPT-based tools via browser extensions and apps containing malware. This gives hackers to access people's devices and potentially their personal information. Meta's Chief Information Security Officer Guy Rosen says the ChatGPT, in a bad sense, is the new crypto, explaining that scammers integrated it to exploit interest in technology. Metadata shows since March, the company has blocked the sharing of more than 1,000 malicious web addresses claimed to be linked to ChatGPT or related tools. Meta says that the company has taken action against malware or malware strains taking advantage of people's interest in the technology. Drug maker Eli Lilly says it developed an experimental Alzheimer's medicine that slowed the declination of a patient's cognitive ability. According to Lilly, the medicine dubbed donanemab works by cleansing the brain from plaque buildups known as amyloid, a hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. But the company notes side effects were adherent. There were 3 deaths in the trial among drug recipients, 2 of which had brain swelling known as amyloid-related imaging abnormalities or ARIA. The trial was tested on more than 1,700 patients for a period of 18 months. Lilly's chief scientific, Dr. Daniel Skowronski, reports that 47% of the population of drug recipients showed no decline in a measure of cognition for a year. Lilly data shows that Alzheimer's affects more than 6 million Americans, with an estimated 1.7 million to 2 million people over 65 in the early stage of the disease. Over in sports, things are heating up as the Boston Celtics and Philadelphia 76ers even up the score at 1 apiece. But over in France, Paris Saint-Germain fans seem to be having trouble in paradise. Vin Pasco has the score.
In the 2023 NBA playoffs, the Boston Celtics bounced back in Game 2 with a 121-87 win over the Philadelphia 76ers. Jaylen Brown's 25 points and Malcolm Brogdon's 23 points led the Celtics to victory, tying this series at 1-1. Sixers Tobias Harris led the team with 16 points, while Embiid scored 15 with 3 rebounds and 5 blocks. Boston's dominating win over the Sixers has also spoiled Joel Embiid's return from injury, and after being named the Kia Most Valuable Player of the Year for the 2023 season. Game 3 of the series will be on Saturday, where the game will shift to Philadelphia. Meanwhile, in football, Lionel Messi announces his decision to leave Paris Saint-Germain this summer at the end of his contract. The Argentine World Cup winner was suspended by PSG for 2 weeks on Tuesday after traveling to Saudi Arabia without the club's permission. Hundreds of club football fans gathered in front of the club's headquarters in Boulogne-Billancourt to express their anger at the recent decisions of PSG. Paris Saint-Germain has also condemned the actions of supporters who gathered outside the home of Neymar and chanted for him to leave the club. The 35-year-old Messi had reached an agreement in principle to extend his stay for another year, but neither club nor the player now wants to sign the deal. He signed a 2-year deal in Paris in 2021 with an option to renew for another year, but that will now not be activated. Barcelona and Messi have been looking into securing a dream return for the forward to the new camp, but with the La Liga leaders facing severe financial difficulties, a move back home looks increasingly unlikely. Vin Pasqua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
A colony of 32 penguins waddle into their new home in a park named Bird Paradise in Singapore. From Jurong Park, one by one, the penguins are transferred by a carrier before they meet the staff to inspect and take records of the birds. Wildlife officials say penguins are seen diving and exploring the deepest recesses of the tank. This indicates a positive result that the penguins are adapting to their new home. Let's end this Thursday with a quote from Carrie Fisher as Leia Organa from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Hope is like the sun. If you only believe it when you can see it, you'll never make it through the night. And happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And that is a wrap for tonight's broadcast. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Nina Richie Elago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.